The chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, Musa Aliyu, says he will take a leading role in the prosecution of anti-corruption cases involving the commission. It's yet another story in corruption scandals making the headlines this week. Well, we're joined now by the former Director General of the Bureau of Public Procurement. Well,
Emeka Eze, good to see you and thanks for your time. Quite a lot happening here, and you know, sometimes it was just recently I said to Ngozi, I said, for anyone who's not had a stint within the civil service, you just might not understand everything. Sometimes you want to use logic. There are procedures, and you don't just learn them
overnight.
At that
level? Learning on the job?
No, you don't learn them at a retreat. You must have you know, years of experience. So please help us. First, let's talk about procurements. Let's talk about the books. Let's talk about all this argument about whether something is there or not there, or interest or not. It's really dicey, and we're excited that you help us break it down.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suleiman, and thank you so much. Good evening, viewers. Obviously, what is procurement? Procurement is the process through which government spends money. Through the acquisition process through which government acquires public goods, public works, and public services. And is guided by rules and regulations. So it's simple.
Rules and regulations.
It's simple. That's why it's public, because you are spending public funds and subject to legislative oversight, subject to public outcry like now, and subject to accountability and transparency. And that is what public procurement is all about. Because at the core of governance is how to spend money, either to deliver goods, to provide infrastructure, or to provide services. The three arms of procurement.
Does it envisage social intervention programs like the ones where you have to, do transfers from government coffers to individuals, to the poorest of the poor, who are the beneficiaries? What exactly does that law or act envisage?
For money to leave government treasury to anywhere, there has to be a process.
Right.
And that process has to be followed.
Walk us through that
process, because you are engaging third party. The recipients are the people who are the final beneficiaries. But the monies will pass through a system, through a process that allows commercial institutions to release money to those people, so that you can track the money, where it's heading to, how it passed through. That's the sense of procurement. You can track the expenditure. So it starts by, because I said some consultants, a lot of people are wasting their time talking about whether this person should get it or not, and leaving the major issue.
And what's the major issue?
The major issue should have been, what was the procurement process that threw up the consultants? How were they selected? Because at the core of somebody getting job is the process. When the process is wrong, every other outcome will be wrong. And the Law of Finance Act 2023 criminalizes the act of not having a procurement plan, with a fine of 3 years or 10 years, 3 years or 10 million fine if you don't have a procurement plan. And procurement plan is about what to procure, how to procure it, and when. So in the process of how, it means, are you going to advertise for it? Are you going to get approval of the president? Are you going to get approval from BPP for selecting? How? And then when, timeline. Right. And then under which budget. It's for us to interrogate and see whether the old system, because I find it strange that it is impossible, almost from what I know, for them to have spent that money without going through a process.
Right.
So we must begin to interrogate, was there a process before this money moved? And then when the new minister came, was that budget from 2024 or 2023?
You know, listen to you. These are the questions people are not asking.
Because people are being emotional about public officers, which is obviously understandable. Because once you are a public officer, you have no privacy anymore. So that's why you are there. as a public officer. Everything about you is in the public.
And as a minister, what's your approval limit? Is there a certain approval limit, or a bypass that you just, sorry, let me paint this quickly. It's quite different when you run in a private enterprise and you say, oh, we're getting a generator, call Mr. Eze, call your contact, and give him the money and all that. So there are procedures listening to you. So it's different once it's within the public service. So is there also a limit?
Incidentally, under the existing rules, the minister has no role in procurement at all.
Has no
Absolutely
role.
no role whatsoever.
The process is done by the accounting officer, the permanent secretaries, who, of course, the permanent secretaries are the accounting officers. The ministers are chief executives. But it is expected while working together, they will be consulting the minister. The permanent secretaries represent the institution. And remember, these ministers just came into the public sector. A lot of them have not had public sector experience. A lot of them operated at the state level, and where the ministry of the budget of a ministry is bigger than that of a state. And so they're required to work closely with the permanent secretaries so that the permanent secretary can guide them with the rules and guidelines and financial regulations and procedures. That
are there exceptions to the rules? Say, social intervention programs. There's the issue of time. Even
during the time of amnesty program, they were subject to due process. Because I remember I reviewed them and issued certificate of no objection.
No, you can have due process, but can you fast track?
Of course you can.
That due process.
You can fast with approval.
Right.
The Bureau of Procurement has to give you an approval, and they will go through the documentations and the reasons you are due and where the money is coming from. It couldn't have been from 2024 budget, so I wouldn't have seen them starting the process on 2024 budget.
Where there's a project accountant, for example, in the case that we have before us, the 585 million naira issue. There's a project accountant, and on the basis of that, we're told that monies, at least it was, applied for, or requisition was made for that amount through the accountant general. According to the accountant general, I said to, the minister, this is not the process, right? But here we are, we're discussing this issue because it's out there. Where there's what's it called, project accountant, is it possible that you can transfer funds from the government coffers to the project accountant, who is an individual, to disburse, to the poorest of the poor? You see, when you say project accountant, the next question will be, what is the project? Right.
And then in answering what is the project, you say, how was the project procured? And then in the course of project, there ought to be a payment mechanism embedded in the project. And so if you have that understanding of what the payment conditions are in the contract guiding the implementation of that project, then it will be speculative to talk about procurement, because projects are not paid to project accountant. Payments are made to recipients, third parties. Yeah. And the project accountant is not a third party. It's an official of government as well. The much you can do is to facilitate payments to the first beneficiaries.
Is there a role for the Ministerial Tenders Board here?
Yes, Ministerial Tenders Board has the approval authority after the processes have been complied with. And then there will be a memo, and is headed by the permanent secretary and all the heads of departments, and then with the director of procurement and the secretary. They will sit and consider all the processes from the beginning and sit down and then consider and approve. After approval, they will now take it to the minister for confirmation. You
know why this is so exciting? It's knowledge-based, and I'm more excited that you're here because you have it. So I want to ask, because you're also a consultant to the government
on
procurement. Does it, at retreats for ministers, does this also form part of what they gain?
Of course. Luckily, I was privileged to be invited by Mr. President to be part of the retreat, and that was much explained to them, right? Wow. But one day retreat or 2 day, 3 day retreat is not enough for them to fully appreciate the whole thing. There is a question of being a little bit humble work with their permanent secretaries, and then the permanent secretaries will guide, as the case may be. Or naturally, when in human relationship there must be quarrels here and there, but if they all understand that all of them are there to deliver and support the president to deliver his goods, then there will be give and take. But at the end of the day, they're all there to serve the public, not any of themselves. And they're there at the pleasure of the president.
Yeah.
Because they're there to do Mr. President's agenda.
So
following laid down rules.
Would you say there's a systemic failure that allows for these kinds of infractions to happen? Where would you say there's a need for reforms to happen in the procurement
I think there's not so much
process?
about reform. It's about the capacity and the sincerity of the operators to submit themselves to rules and not be too much in a hurry to want things done like as if you're in the private sector. One thing about public sector is that it's rule-based. The process is more important than the outcome because of these things like this. And the means justify the end, but in some political circles they say the end justifies the means.
Right.
But the public sector is that the means justifies the end. And that means is about process. And process means, all our books have provisions that cater for every any manner of scenario or situation, including this kind of scenario. All you need to do is to follow them.
In a subtle way, I think you've just said it all in that one line by talking
the
about
rule.
the sincerity. And that's very key. I'm hoping that in the days to come, we should have you again and steal some of your evenings and come have this very robust conversation with you. Emeka Eze, thank you. Always a delight speaking with you.
Thank you so much.